trying to trade and to develop outside the dollar and outside the West. So in this video, I want to help explain what's happening to gold right now and why, what China's gold corridor actually is and how it works, and how it's going to be used to fund the development across the entire world without ever touching the IMF. I'm going to talk about what that means for the US and for the dollar, and especially for investors, because this will affect everything from interest rates to commodities and even Bitcoin. So with that said, let's get into it. Hi, my name is Henri Jick. Hope you're doing well. Come for the finance and stay for the gold. So before I get into how China's rebuilding the entire financial system, I want to explain the bird's eye view of why the world is even looking at an alternative in the first place. And it really comes down to the idea of trust. The trust that countries used to have in dollars. For example, around 70% of all the global reserves were once stored in US dollars. In other words, countries held their wealth in US treasuries, bonds, right? Because they were considered to be the safest assets on earth. But then that started to change sometime in 2022, because that's when the United States froze about $300 billion worth of Russia's foreign reserves. Now, regardless of how you feel about that politically, what it showed to the rest of the world was, if your reserves are held in dollars, they're not really yours to begin with. They can be seized, they can be locked, and we can just turn it off with the click of a button. So countries were like, okay, I have a question. If you can do that to a nuclear power like Russia, what happens then if we disagree with you next, right? So that's why this change started to accelerate, because there was this loss of trust for paper assets. Central banks around the world, especially in what are called emerging markets, started to lower their exposure to US assets, and they started selling off their treasuries, and they started buying gold instead. Slowly at first, but then faster and faster. Check this out. This is fascinating. This is a chart of how much gold China has. For the longest time, you could see it didn't really move anywhere, kind of going sideways. They bought some, they sold some, they bought some, but as soon as President Trump started the tariff threats, the chart explodes, right? China starts publicly accumulating gold and locking it up in their vaults. It's the fastest pace of buying in modern history. It's being done on a scale that's publicly, this